Beneath the biting chill of a December winter, James's small farm was not only the place where he pursued his agricultural dreams, but also a sanctuary for Diep, a woman who had once suffered a life of servitude under Pau. As their love grew deeper, James's father, Mr. Tong, unexpectedly returned, carrying with him the prejudices of wealth and the painful past of Diep as a new challenge. Memories of Pau's cruelty still haunted her, yet the compassion from Lin and James's steadfast love shone like a beacon of hope. In episode 24, we witness whether Mr. Tong will accept her, or if their love will face even greater storms from within the family. Early that morning at Noi Bai Airport, the December chill permeated the bustling terminal. A thick fog draped the corridors like a pale, translucent curtain. Every passenger's breath turned to white mist in the roughly 41 degf air, blending with the whistling wind through the expansive glass doors. The constant clatter of rolling suitcases echoed among hurried travelers, people hauling their worn luggage, calling out to one another, while the flight announcements played like a familiar soundtrack to the rush. Mr. Tong, James's father, disembarked from a long-haul flight. His polished leather shoes met the cold marble floor with a measured step. Dressed in an expensive black suit that perfectly molded his broad frame, his weathered face bore deep wrinkles, marks of a lifetime battling poverty to rise to affluence, of every grueling day spent escaping scarcity. Retrieving his phone from his suit pocket, his cold fingers dialed deliberately and his deep, authoritative voice resonated over the speaker amid the whistling wind. "Hello, have someone meet me at the airport right now, I've just landed." The assistant on the other end, voice trembling slightly under pressure, replied, "Yes sir, right away." After hanging up, Mr. Tong's steely gaze swept across the throng. From modestly dressed travelers tugging along worn-out suitcases to sharply dressed businessmen in immaculate suits. A heavy feeling settled in him as he thought of James, the son he had nurtured for 28 years, molding him into an outstanding man. And now he heard that his son was in love with a poor, uneducated girl with a troubled past. In his inner voice, cold as the winter wind, he vowed, "If he chooses the wrong person, all my sacrifices will be for nothing. I cannot let my boy repeat my mistakes." Just a few miles away, at James's farm in Tanmin village, Diep had risen before dawn, when the weak light barely pierced the thick, low-hanging clouds. The bitter cold seeped through her patched-up, thin jacket. Her cracked, trembling hands gripped a knife as she carefully sliced through sweet potatoes in a damp furrow of soil. The rough calluses on her hands testified to countless days of relentless labor. With temperatures hovering around 37 degrees, each dew-covered leaf sparkled like a tiny jewel in the fragile morning light. Yet the cold made her shiver, and her bare feet, protected only by worn-out rubber sandals, scuffed against the ground, their soft sounds merging with the whistling wind through the lush rows. Looking out over the sprawling field of sweet potatoes, the result of her tireless work, she felt a mix of pride and a vague worry about her own worth. A poor girl once sold into slavery, once shrouded in the darkness of humiliation. This was James's farm, she thought, her heart warming as she remembered the man who had rescued her from the oppression under Paro. The brutal husband who had tormented her for 5 long years, who once bellowed in drunken fury, "If you're stupid, just stay stupid. What good is learning?" Tearing apart the old book she had salvaged from a heap of trash, his punches falling like merciless rain, and the biting words of Mrs. Maid, her ex-husband's mother, cutting into her pride. "Worthless. If you can't bear a child, don't even dream of being a real woman." Clenching her knife, Diep shed silent tears that mingled with the cold dew, and with a trembling determination she whispered to herself, "I must push forward so I won't let James down." Continuing her work, each sweet potato dropped into an old bamboo basket became a silent vow that she would not let her past drag her down again. At a small cafe near the farm, James sat across from his longtime friend and business partner, Tuan. The soft light filtering through a wooden window accentuated the sparkle of his determined eyes. The modest cafe, tucked amid the fields, had a roof of dried leaves that creaked whenever the wind blew, and its cracked earthen walls seemed to recount the tales of time. The aroma of strong black coffee wafted from old porcelain cups on a time-worn wooden table, mixing with the earthy scent drifting in from the fields outside. James, in his heavy grey coat still dusted with the farm's soil, spoke passionately about business. His deep, determined voice said, "I heard you have a vacant plot on your farm?" Tuan, clad in a faded dark green jacket worn by many seasons, nodded while cradling a steaming cup of coffee. "That's right, the rice yield was so low that I left it fallow. Now, I'm focusing on fruit trees, oranges, grapefruits, tangerines, things that are easier to manage and yield better profits." James's eyes wandered out the window toward the distant fields. "Is the plot spacious?" Tuan replied confidently, About the same size as the one you saw last time, around 3 to 4 hectares. I'm thinking of trying a short-term food project. Water, spinach, cabbage, mustard greens, lettuce. Clean and safe. If it works, it won't just bring income to me, it might change the way our farmers grow crops, helping them break free from the cycle of low-pressed rice. Smiling, James set his coffee down and said, "Great idea. I'd like to lease it for 5 years. What price are you thinking?" After a moment's thought, Tuan looked out at the green rows and said, "My whole farm is 6 or 7 hectares, but I'm renting out only half of it. For a friend, I'd say 250 million VND for 5 years. How does that sound?" James nodded in agreement, his eyes reflecting approval. "Reasonable. Are you free this afternoon? I'd like to see it. Check the water supply." Tuan grinned warmly. "Absolutely, I'll show you. The water comes from a stream up there. It's modest in the dry season, but excellent in the summer." Their conversation then drifted to the hardships of rice farmers, and James couldn't help but think of Diep. I wonder how she's holding up in this bitter cold. Meanwhile, Diep strapped her basket of sweet potatoes onto an old bicycle and pedaled hard along a rough dirt road leading to the town market. The small pebbles clattered under her wheels with a dry staccato sound, mingling with the whistling wind as it danced through the trees lining the road. The cold bit at her hands, the cracks in her skin stinging even more in the frigid air, yet she pressed on with unwavering resolve. Ahead, the soft glow of the market emerged through the thick fog. At the bustling central market, vibrant stalls draped in shimmering metallic threads and adorned in splashes of red, yellow and blue swayed in the gentle breeze, carrying the promise of a new year. Laughter and lively chatter filled the air, mixed with the shouts of street vendors and the steady cadence of footsteps on red clay. Diep parked her bicycle near a familiar spot, a small patch of ground under a weathered banyan tree, and carefully set her basket down. As the moist soil clung to the scattered sweet potatoes, she softly asked a nearby vendor, "Excuse me, may I sell my sweet potatoes here?" A kindly, middle-aged woman, her warm brown eyes sparkling as she tied a bundle of water spinach, looked up with a friendly smile. "Of course, you can sell anything here." Diep nodded gratefully and arranged her sweet potatoes on an old, worn-out tarp. The fresh, earthy aroma of the produce drew the curious eyes of passers-by. "How much for these?" an elderly woman rasped, examining a potato with a twinkle in her faded eyes. 10,000 dong per kilogram, Diep replied gently, fighting back the chill that tightened her throat. The old woman bought 2 kilograms, rummaging in her tattered cloth bag for crumpled bills, and smiled kindly. "These are beautiful. You've taken such good care of them. They must be sweet." As Diep accepted the money, a warm glow of gratitude filled her, even as thoughts of James, the man who had transformed her life with his kindness and patience, who had even taught her to read words like sweet potato, water, and plant, drifted through her mind. A fragile worry stirred like a cold breeze. Am I really worthy of him? A poor, uneducated girl. Can I truly stand beside James? Back at the airport, Mr. Tong slid into his luxurious car. The door closed with a crisp click, sealing him away from the cold and the clamor outside. His piercing gaze scanned the frosted view through the fogged window. Barren, leafless trees, and in the distance, the dilapidated outskirts of Hanoi emerged faintly. Settling into the plush leather seat, the warmth of the car's heater slowly chased away the chill from his hands. Yet his heart remained as heavy as a stone. He pulled his phone from his tailored vest and dialed with decisive precision. His deep, commanding voice filled the silent car. "How's the assignment I gave you coming along?" A hesitant but clear voice responded, his middle-aged secretary. "Sir, I've been keeping an eye on the boss, as you instructed. He's managing the company well, but he's now in love with a girl." Mr. Tong's brow furrowed, his deep-set wrinkles deepening. "What's she like?" he snapped. The secretary answered cautiously, "She's a good person, nothing to complain about, but she's poor. From a difficult background, only educated up to the 5th grade, and she's 22. I met her today. She was hard-working, selling sweet potatoes at the market." Mr. Tong's tone grew icy as he interjected, "All right, that's fine. Tomorrow shift her to the new company. Don't let James know." He hung up and drummed his fingers on the leather seat, his mind a tangle of unease and disdain. A poor, uneducated girl. How could she ever be worthy of James? He had struggled all his life to secure his son's future. He could not allow him to repeat his own mistakes. Memories of his own impoverished past, when his mother died of cancer because he couldn't afford treatment, cut him deeply, fueling his resolve that James must not make the same error. Diep continued selling her sweet potatoes, each crumpled 10,000 dong note carefully smoothed and tucked away into her old cloth bag slung over her shoulder. A small sum would allow her to buy a new watering can, a modest but essential tool for taking care of James's farm. Then a well-dressed, middle-aged man in a thick coat approached, his piercing gaze appraising her as he asked in a deep voice amidst the market's bustle, "Are these potatoes any good?" Startled by his imposing presence, Diep nodded timidly. "Yes, very good. 10,000 dong per kilogram." He selected 3 kilograms, inspecting the produce with clean, uncalloused hands that contrasted sharply with her own rough ones. After handing over the money and lingering a moment longer, he said in a low tone, "If you ever have more to sell, bring them here. I'll buy." Diep smiled politely, replying, "Yes, sir," unaware that this man was none other than Mr. Tong, silently scrutinizing her. As he walked away through the busy throng, a fleeting impression of her diligence stayed with him, though his thoughts remained cold. "She's hard-working, but not enough to stand beside my son. A poor, uneducated girl cannot contribute to his success." That late afternoon, Diep returned to the farm, her weary feet dragging along the red dirt road. She paused in front of the modest wooden house, surprised to find Haki, the little dog, missing from his usual spot in the yard. "Haki, where are you?" she called out, worry in her voice. Stepping into the yard, she noticed tiny paw prints in the damp soil and felt a slight relief. He must have gone off to play. Setting down her basket of sweet potatoes, she poured herself a small cup of water. The cold seeped into every breath as painful memories of Pao flooded back. Those senseless beatings, Mrs. May's cutting insults, and the day she was cast out with nothing but her trembling hands and Haki trailing behind. Clenching her fists, she vowed silently, "I must be strong so I won't disappoint James." She picked up one of James's old books and read aloud words like plant, flower, and water, finding warmth in the memory of his encouraging gaze. Later, James returned from the cafe and drove along the dusty road to Tuan's farm. Stopping before a vast field spanning 6 to 7 hectares, he watched as the cold wind stirred wild banana trees. Tuan stood nearby and pointed. "This is the plot, about 3 to 4 hectares available for lease. The water comes from a stream. It's low in the dry season but abundant in summer." James nodded. "I'd like to check the stream." They walked together up to a small waterfall, where water cascaded over moss-covered stones. Satisfied, James said, "The water is good. Let's go ahead at 250 million VND for 5 years. Then?" Tuan smiled. "That works, my friend." After shaking hands, James added, "I'll head back this afternoon to sign the contract and pay the deposit." His thoughts briefly drifting to Diep. "I wonder how she's doing right now." As night fell, Diep sat inside the modest wooden house, the flickering glow of an oil lamp illuminating an old book. Haki still hadn't returned, and anxiety nudged her to step out into the yard. "Haki, where are you?" she called, her voice swallowed by the rustling of dry leaves in the cold wind. Returning inside, she set about chopping sweet potatoes to prepare dinner, her heart heavy. "I have only him as my friend. Don't leave me behind." As the aroma of cooked sweet potatoes filled the room, her eyes grew distant with thoughts of James, the man who had taught her to read, who had given her hope, and she wondered, am I really worthy of him? Meanwhile, Mr. Tong, now in his luxurious car, gazed through the frost-covered window at the barren trees and the shabby outskirts of Hanoi in the distance. Settling into the plush leather seat, he recalled his own impoverished past, when his mother died of cancer because he lacked the money for treatment, a memory that had steeled him against failure. He thought of Diep. Picking up his phone, he asked his secretary, "Have you met her yet?" A cautious reply came over the speaker, "Yes, sir. I bought some sweet potatoes from her today. She's hardworking and kind." Mr. Tong's voice turned cold. "I'll meet her myself to see if she's worthy." Later, James returned to the farm and found Diep huddled by a wooden table under the flickering oil lamp, her face pale yet determined. He approached gently. "You're back." Diep looked up with bright eyes. "Yes, where did you go?" Sitting beside her, James asked, "I just went to inspect the farm with Tuan about leasing it for our project. How was your day?" Diep smiled. "I sold some sweet potatoes and earned enough to buy a new watering can. But Haki still isn't back. I'm really worried." Taking her hand, James replied reassuringly, "Don't worry, I'll find him. Are you tired?" Diep shook her head. "Not at all. Come have dinner with me." James's heart warmed at her resilience. Unbeknownst to them, Mr. Tong silently observed Diep, setting an even greater challenge for her. While James was determined to protect their love, The looming question remained. Would he ever accept her? Stay tuned for episode 25 to find out.
Trong đau khổ, giờ đây đã có chút ánh sáng nhờ sự xuất hiện của CEO Diep, người đàn ông giàu có với trái tim ấm áp. Nhưng khi tình yêu thương đã tưởng chừng đã chạm đến trái tim cô, một bóng đen từ quá khứ lại hiện về, kéo theo những nghi ngờ và nỗi sợ hãi. Liệu trái tim Diệp có đủ dũng cảm để đón nhận hạnh phúc, hay cô mãi bị giam cầm trong chính những vết thương lòng không lành? Câu trả lời nằm trong những giờ khắc cảm xúc của tập 13 này. Chúc các bạn nghe truyện vui vẻ. Diệp đứng giữa cánh rừng thưa, nơi những chiếc lá rong xanh mướt rủ xuống như những tấm rèm tự nhiên. Ánh nắng đầu ngày xuyên qua tán cây, chiếu lên khuôn mặt cô những vệt sáng mờ nhạt, làm nổi bật đôi mắt trầm buồn. Hôm nay cô quyết định đi hái lá rong để bán. Một công việc đơn giản nhưng đủ để cô cảm thấy mình còn giá trị trong cuộc sống đầy bất ổn này. Trong lòng cô, một ý nghĩ lặp đi lặp lại. Như tiếng gió rít qua rừng, cô dần